This is Scott Becker with the Becker Private Equity Business Podcast. Today's topic is analyzing versus acting in management and in business. And there are a variety of thoughts here. One of the things we see in business or in other endeavors is many people don't have what I think of as a bias for action or a sense of urgency. Thus, they spend so much time thinking about something and never really get to do it because they're so deep in almost analysis by paralysis or being paralyzed by analysis. One of the things that we think differently, and I'll sort of put this forth as a chapter in the book, and this topic talks about a book that we're authoring that might never come out, God only knows. But in management, in a lot of things, not necessarily investing, a bias for action is critical to success and to learning. Ultimately, one typically needs to be working at something and try to constantly learn while doing to actually make progress. There's a ton written on how activity and busyness is not the key to success. And we don't disagree with this, but there's some balance between activity and busyness and deep thought to allow success. I mean, you've got to combine these both things, activity, and sometimes activity drives the mind, drives you forward, allows you to see things, plus thoughtfulness that could lead to better results. I have seen, if I was to weigh the two different situations, I've seen far more situations where people never really get started because they're so scared to get started, they're so scared to talk to customers, they're scared to really move forward, they're scared to put themselves out there, versus the other hand, people that get so deeply busy that never really think and never find success because they just keep themselves very busy. Of the two, I would say that I've seen much more of people not really digging in, not really with that bias for action. And in the contrast, if you're one of these people that by nature is always digging in, always has a bias for action, you just have to measure that with how do you then think about actually making changes, making differences, seeing those differences, and so forth. One of the great concepts that we read about over the last year is this concept of, who, not how. So you get deeply busy, and then you look for somebody to be able to bounce thoughts off of, to mentor you, to coach you, and how to look at things differently, sort of this who, not how concept. But the real concept here is, we think a bias for action and a sense of urgency is so critical. We find far too many people, in terms of if there's a spectrum of this, that get paralyzed by too much analysis, too much thinking. The CEO of Becker's Healthcare, who's a very close colleague of mine for a very long time, used to talk about two different types of salespeople. One type of salesperson would be ready, aim, fire. Think for a few minutes, they do some analysis, and they move forward and make calls and talk to people. The other one would be described as ready, aim, fire. And by the time they actually get to fire, they'll so worn themselves out and so sort of almost lost the thread that they're useless. So the concept here is, we're a big fan of this sense of urgency, the bias for action. It's not perfect, but we find it, if I have to choose between two things, I'll take that every day over people that get paralyzed by too much analysis. Thank you for listening to the Becker Private Equity Business Podcast. And thank you to Chanel Bunger, our wonderful producer who has the patience of a saint. Thank you for joining us today, Chanel, and thank you to our audience. Any questions, anybody wants to talk about any of these subjects, always feel free to text Scott Becker, reach me on LinkedIn. The text number is 773-766-5322. Thank you very much.